Young Klaka peered out from a small crack in the hayloft window, not daring to move and hardly daring to breathe. What was happening with the Larsens? He simply had to know, even though it was nearly daylight, and under normal circumstances, he would have been well out of sight. But today's circumstances were anything but normal, and his curiosity proved stronger than any warnings that Gamel had tried to instill in his young mind about the dangers of breaking the rules. Klaka opened the window just a smidge wider. Why were the Larsens gathering in the barnyard at this odd hour? He scooched forward for a closer look. Watching the Larsens was not a new pastime for Klaka. In fact, it wasn't a pastime at all. It was his job. The family had been his responsibility for years now, and though he spent his nights trekking about in the forest, he was usually asleep in the highest part of the Larsens' barn long before the sun crept up over the frozen fields of Lolland. This was his place, his home. He looked after the family and the animals, doing what little kindnesses he could for such a small being. And the Larsens? Well, they had always been quite kind to Klaka as well, though they knew very little of his existence. They had never seen him, and they certainly didn't know his name, which was as it should be. Klaka knew some of the Larsens believed in Nisse. The children always believed, until a certain age anyway, and the old grandfather had undoubtedly known Klaka was there. But the younger Mr. Larsen and his wife, and the girl, Bettina, Klaka couldn't be sure about them. But he knew one thing to be true. Mr. Larsen was no fool. A Danish farmer with any sense at all would do well to recognize that his barn could be home to a nisse, and should that be the case, he'd best stay on the nisse's good side. Klaka knew he should have been deep in the cover of the hayloft on this Christmas morning, but at the tender age of 62, Klaka was a young nisse, and his sense of curiosity overpowered what little common sense he'd managed to store up. At the moment, he was glued to the crack in the hayloft window. His plump little fingers held it open just enough to see the family in the barnyard below. The older Larsen girl, Bettina, stood in the doorway of the house with the little one they called Pia. Both waved as their mother and father left the driveway in the family's small red car and headed toward town. Klaka was clever and observant, and when he saw the large suitcases they took along, he quickly deduced that Mr. and Mrs. Larsen would be away for more than a day. The door of the house closed, and the Larsen sisters disappeared inside. Klaka let the hayloft window close, too. There was nothing more to see out there. Klaka wished he could venture out to tell Gamel about the Larsens. Perhaps Gamel could explain why the Larsen parents were acting so strangely. But he dared not go where he might be seen. So Klaka settled into the straw, feeling very unsettled and also very hungry. For the Larsens had neglected their nisse last night. Christmas Eve, the one night each year when all Danish families, believers and unbelievers alike, acknowledge even the possibility of a nisse by placing a bowl of warm, bubbly rice pudding in the barn after the holiday meal. That small gesture was all it would take to appease their nisse friend for another year. And every year, without fail, the Larsens had left the bowl of pudding in the barn, topped with a nice clump of golden butter. Because melted butter pleases a nisse more than just about anything. Klaka remembered how Bettina had hollered with delight in years past when she found the empty bowl in the mow the next morning. Every buttery drop of pudding licked clean. He scoffed at the adults who rationalized among themselves that the pudding had been devoured by hungry barn cats. But the young and the wise knew differently. To them, it was more than a holiday ritual. It was a time-honored fact. Take care of your nisse, and your nisse will take care of you. The Larsens had never strayed from tradition. Not once had Klaka been overlooked on Christmas Eve. Until now. For the first time in 12 years, Klaka questioned having left his home in Falster.